Hey YouTube, Ed here with Jack of all trades and welcome to another video. So today, quite obviously, we're going to talk about axes. What to look for when buying an axe, some history of the axe, a little bit of terminology and what axes are typically used for. So without further ado, let's quit talking and let's talk about axes. And welcome back. So yes, like I said in the intro, today we're going to talk about axes. But as per the usual, I got to ask you to go down and hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you get notified of upcoming videos. And anything you want me to talk about or review or show you how to do here on the Jack of all trades channel, just leave me a comment and I'll do my best to get it done. All right, axes. Axes are arguably one of the oldest tools ever invented by man. And they've actually progressed very little in comparison to other inventions like the firearm or the automobile. Axes came on the scene about 1.5 million years ago and started off as nothing more than stone wedges that were simply held in the hand. And at some point in the Middle Stone Age, around 6000 BC, humans started to affix handles to their stone wedges, either bone or made of wood, lashed with some kind of animal leather, and the modern axe was born. So arguably, axes are probably one of the most versatile tools man has ever created, making it a sort of jack of all trades of tools, if you will allow me that pun. Axes have been used to cultivate the land so you could grow crops, dig holes, dig up roots, shape wood. They've been used to kill and butcher animals, process them for food, process their skins for clothing and shelter, and process wood for various purposes, fire being the most widely known. And yes, axes have actually been used in war. Battle axes are not just a thing of fantasy movies. They were actually used back when swords and bows and arrows were the primary battle weapons. Axes were oftentimes used, and actually to this day, some soldiers in various countries carry tomahawks as a backup weapon. So they are still used in war in a lot of cases. So whether made out of stone, copper, bronze, iron, steel, the basic form and function of the axe has remained relatively unchanged. And yes, axes come in many different types to include hatchets, tomahawks. We got a rigger's axe over here, battle axes. We have a felling axe over here, double-bitted axe, single-bitted axe, throwing axes, fireman's axes, adze. You just name it. There's so many different types of axes out there, but the form and the function of the axe has primarily been the same since they were first conceived. Now, in today's world, axes are typically associated with processing wood for various reasons, not least of which is to build fires for heat, for campfires, for heating your homes, things of that effect. People are using axes to process firewood. And yes, a splitting maul is considered an axe. So when you're splitting your wood, you're still using an axe, unless, of course, you're using a hydraulic wood splitter, and then you're cheating. So let's talk about the basic components of the axe. And really, you can break an axe down into two basic components. You have your handle, also called a haft, and you have the head of the axe, which is the big steel part on the end. And each of these two components have their own subcomponents. So let's take the head, for example. The head has a bunch of subcomponents, one of which is being the hole in the middle of it, which is called the eye. The back end of the axe, if you have a single-bitted axe like this one, the back end of the axe is called the pole or the butt. A lot of people use this portion of the axe for pounding. However, a lot of axes are not hardened on their backside on the pole or the butt, and they're not made for pounding steel. It's fine if you're going to be pounding wood or soft items like that, but unless you have a rigger's axe like we have down here in front of us, this pole or butt has not been hardened, and you'll actually ruin it by pounding on things like steel and nails and things of that effect. Right down below here, right below the eye, some axes have a protrusion that sticks down, very similar to this shaping axe right here. You can see that it kind of sticks down right there. There's a little tip there. That's called the lug or the lip, and all that does is gives a stronger a stronger contact between the handle and the head of the axe. It's just a more metal to wood contact, if you will. So the side of the axe right here along the side of the eye is called the cheek or the side of the axe. Everything forward of the eye is called the bit or the blade. And where the axe starts to taper down into the cutting edge is called the bevel. And of course, the very edge that does all the work is called the cutting edge. Now, the lower corner of the axe right here is either called the lower corner or the heel. Additionally, everything below this plane at the bottom of the axe here, this part that hangs down here, is called the beard, unimaginatively enough. And every axe has a bit of a beard. Some are more pronounced than the others. You've got this tomahawk here that I made. It's got a very pronounced beard on it, whereas this standard axe right here doesn't have a lot of beard to it, but it does have a beard. So this upper corner right here is also called the upper corner of the toe or the toe of the axe. So the axe head has got various kinds of parts to it, as does the haft or the handle of the axe. The portion of the axe right here, right below the head, is called the shoulder. This portion of the axe right here is called the belly, and this portion right here is called the throat. Unimaginatively enough, the part where you hold on to the axe is called the grip. And at the base of the axe is called a knob or a swell, which the sole purpose of the knob or the swell is to keep the axe from slipping out of your hand. Some axes have a more pronounced swell than others. Some axes have a very minor swell, and there's a very, very minimal swell to it. This shaping hatchet right here, you can see the swell is very light. There's not a whole lot of swell to it. Whereas this standard axe has got a very pronounced swell and it's very large, and it makes it very easy to hang on to. Okay, what do you look for in an axe? Well, the first thing you need to do when you're going to think you need an axe is you have to determine what the purpose of that axe is for. Axes come in various types and sizes and shapes for various reasons. We could basically break axes down into three major types. You have your standard axe, you have a single bit like this one, you have a double bit like that one, and then you have various types of hatchets. Now, yes, I know there's other types of axes. There's mauls, there's adze, there's all kinds of different types, but those are the three basic types of axes that most people are going to be concerned with. You also have some specialties axes like this rigger's hatchet or rigger's axe up here, where you can see the pole or the butt is actually shaped in the form of a hammer. That axe is actually used for pounding nails and things of that. They came into play back when the oil rigs and the oil derricks were made out of wood, and the people and the men that were erecting those oil rigs needed an axe to shape and trim wood, but they also needed something that they could use to pound in nails and bolts and things of that effect, so the rigger's axe was invented. But for today's discussion, we're just going to keep it really simple, and we're just going to talk about the three basic types. For example, if you're a Boy Scout and you need a hatchet and you're using it to maybe pound in tent stakes or process a little bit of firewood for a campfire, a hatchet very similar to this hatchet, which oddly enough is a Boy Scout's hatchet, might be all that you need. A hatchet like this can be used to pound in tent stakes. It can be used to process wood for a small fire or some kindling wood. It's very light in the hand. It's very easy to carry. It's actually got a little notch cut out here that you can actually use for pulling nails. And this particular hatchet does have a hardened pole on it, so you could feasibly use this to pound harder items with it. So if you're a Boy Scout, this might be what you're looking for in an axe. Now, if you're hunting or if you've got a cabin or something like that, and you just need a basic axe for processing a little bit of firewood, you might need to step up to, say, this 3¼ pound standard axe. Now, this is a standard single-bitted axe. It's got a 3¼ pound head on it, and this would be the axe that most people would use for, hunting or extended stay camping or to process a little bit of firewood. This is a pretty common standard axe. It's heavy enough to actually get some work done, yet it's light enough that pretty much anybody can wield it to get the work done that they need to get done. Now, on the other hand, if you are felling trees, which I can't imagine too many people are doing, but there are some people out there that like to fell trees with an axe, I suppose, you're going to want to go to something a little bigger like this 4½ pound American felling axe. Now, this axe happened to come out of Harbor Freight. I bought this axe just because it was fairly inexpensive and I wanted a bigger axe. And I actually wanted to try it out, and that'll actually be the subject of an upcoming video. But if you're going to be felling trees, something like this 4.5-pound American felling axe might be more of what you're looking for. To swing this all day long, you're going to be tired. It's heavy. It's comparatively heavier than this axe, but it is designed to be heavy in the hand so that when you are felling trees, you can do a lot of work, and it'll really make short work of a tree. And of course, if you're a professional logger and you're doing logging all day long, something like that 3.5-pound double-bitted axe might be exactly what you're looking for. There aren't too many professional loggers out there that are still swinging axes like that. But if you are, a double-bitted axe is very handy for a number of different reasons. You can sharpen them differently. You can sharpen one side for splitting, and you can sharpen one side on the other side sharper for perhaps felling trees. You can sharpen both sides extremely sharp for felling trees, and that way when one side gets dull, you just flip the axe around and you've got a fresh blade. There are a number of reasons why somebody would want a double-bitted axe, but most of average people out there are not going to be needing a double-bitted axe. At the end of the day, only you can decide exactly what you need that axe for, and you're going to have to make the decision yourself. But there are lots of choices out there, and you just have to determine what your choice or what your desired job is, and then choose your axe accordingly. Now, what do you look for when you're buying an axe? There's basically two things that you want to look for when you're purchasing an axe. And ironically enough, they kind of revolve around the two main parts, the head and the handle. Let's talk about the head first. First, you're going to want a head that's of high carbon steel content, and you're going to want one that's made of good quality steel. I typically tend to gravitate towards American-made axes, Canadian-made axes. There are some axes that are made in Norway and Finland that are made of really good steel. On the other inverse of that, I always try to avoid axe heads that are made in China. Chinese steel is oftentimes of a recycled nature. The carbon content is often very inconsistent. I find that Chinese axe heads just don't hold a blade or hold an edge on the cutting edge as well, and they're just not as of good a quality steel. Now, this American felling axe out of Harbor Freight, this axe head is actually made in India. Not a whole lot better than Chinese-made steel, but I have found that heads that are made in India do seem to have a little bit better quality than your average Chinese-made head. They do hold an edge a little better, and as long as you take care of them, these axes will last you for quite a while. And to be quite honest with you, for your average American homeowner, an Indian-made axe head is probably going to be fine. Now, I use an axe quite a bit. I use an axe for camping. I use it for processing firewood up here at my cabin. I carry an axe quite regularly, so I try to buy good quality steel axes. Now let's talk about handles. Now, I've basically seen handles made out of four basic materials. Wood, typically ash or hickory, like this standard American axe here. Plastic, which I do not have an example of here because I refuse to buy a plastic handled axe. Fiberglass handles like this axe right here, and this again is a Harbor Freight hatchet, and that's got a fiberglass handle on it. You've got steel handles that are wrapped in some kind of material. This one's wrapped in a rubber grip. You can see that this one here is wrapped with wood, and the steel goes all the way down as a full tang, as does this hatchet. And those are basically the four types of axe handles. Now, they all have their advantages. Plastic is cheap and it won't rot, and that's about the only thing you're going to get good out of a plastic handle. And I generally don't buy plastic handles because they suck. They don't feel good in the hand. They'll break. Oftentimes a plastic handled axe has also got a cheap head on it, so I just avoid them with all costs. Fiberglass handles are the next thing that I would look at, and fiberglass handles once again won't rot, and they do have a distinct advantage in the fact that fiberglass handles will oftentimes absorb a lot of shock of using the axe because they have some inherent flex built into them. Then you get axes or hatchets like this over here where the steel from the axe is all the way through the handle, and then the axe is wrapped in some kind of material. The advantage of those is they're extremely durable. They last and last and last. The problem with if you ever do wear these handles out or they ever need to be replaced, they can oftentimes be kind of a pain in the butt to replace. I personally am a big fan of wood. I like wood handles, especially good hickory handles. They've never failed me. They always do really well. And as long as you take care of them, a wood-handled axe will last you for years and years and years and years. I've seen axe handles made out of hickory and and ash. Both are good handles. I prefer hickory, but both are suitable for pretty much any kind of axe usage. The downside of wood handles is if you do happen to miss your target and you hit the handle, you can actually damage the handle, and the handle would need to be replaced. The good thing is that replacement wooden handles are very readily available and easy to find, and they're actually fairly easy to replace on these things. And there's quite literally hundreds of YouTube videos out there on how to replace axe handles. When you're buying an axe, especially if it's got a wooden handle, you're going to want to make sure that the grain runs the full length of the handle for additional strength. You don't want grains of the axe that are actually going to veer off midway through the handle, because that's a good spot for the handle to break. You want nice straight grain that runs the full length of the handle. Then you can also look at the butt or the end of the axe here, and you want to see grain that is really tight and close together. You don't want grain that's kind of wide and far apart. You want it all nice, tight together and very, very dense. Then you've got a really good handle. And you can do that simply by looking at the butt of the axe handle and and seeing how close the grain is. And then that'll tell you if you're getting a decent axe handle. Like I said, make sure when you're looking at the axe handle that you don't see the grain veer off somewhere midway down the handle, because that'll be just a really good spot for it to break in the future. A lot of wood-handled axes, when you buy them in the store, like this one that I got from Harbor Freight, will come with a varnish on them. That's kind of inevitable in a lot of cases when you're buying store-bought axes. The first thing I would recommend doing is, if you buy an axe from a store and you can see that it's got a coat of varnish on it, you're going to want to remove that varnish. And it's not hard to do. You just simply have to take and scrape that varnish off, take some sandpaper, smooth it all back out again. And then once you've done that, you just want to dip the axe handle or wipe the axe handle down with some linseed oil, some boiled linseed oil, and that'll give you a nice clean finish. It won't be nearly as slippery in the hand as that varnish is, and that axe handle will last you for years if you continue to take care of it like that. So where to buy axes? Now, you can buy axes in any number of places. You can go to your local home center, you can buy axes. You can go to Harbor Freight and you can buy an axe. You can go to eBay or any places online and buy an axe. You can buy axes any number of places. I actually like to buy axes at auction sales, barn sales, and antique stores, if you can believe that or not. A lot of times these older antique axes have really good steel in them. The problem is oftentimes the handles need to be replaced, but that really isn't a problem for me. I just replace the handles. But the point is you get really good steel in your axe heads. Back in the day, in antique axe land, that carbon content in these heads was really, really good, and it was really, really even. And a lot of times those axes were made by companies that really care, and they did a great job of making sure that the material that they used to make their axe heads was really, really good. So don't overlook antique malls. Don't overlook barn sales, auction sales, things like that. You find that old rusty axes that's been sitting in the corner. A lot of times you can clean that rust off and you can get a very good functional axe. Now, admittedly, if you go to an antique store, you might end up paying a little more for it, because anytime you put the word vintage or antique onto a product, you could pretty much double the cost. Now let's talk about caring for your axe a little bit. Now, obviously with the handle, you're going to want to keep your handles oiled. You're going to want to try and keep them dry as best as you can. You're going to want to store them indoors, not outdoors. And just keep them oiled up. And if they do start to get a little rough and things like that, you can just take a little bit of sandpaper. You can smooth them back off again, recoat them with oil. Bob's your uncle and you're good to go. As far as the head goes, it's not all that dissimilar. You want to try and keep them dry. You want to keep them in a cool, dry place. I store mine inside the building where it's heated. You're going to want to keep them oiled so that they don't rust. And quite obviously, you're going to want to keep them sharp. Now let's talk about sharp. There's some really major misconceptions out there about how sharp an axe really truly needs to be. And I've seen some content creators out there actually do YouTube videos on how to make your axe sharp enough to shave with. That is ridiculous. You don't need an axe that is sharp enough to shave with. If you are a competition lumberjack or a professional logger, okay, you might need to have an extremely sharp axe, because the whole point of it is you want to get through that log as fast as humanly possible. But for the average everyday Joe out there, you do not need an axe that is sharp enough to shave with. You don't need to put it on some special buffing or honing wheels or grinding stones or anything like that. You don't need anything more than a decent file to make sure that your axe has a good edge on it so it'll do the job that you need it to do. I have never in my life needed to take an axe any more to an edge than what I can get with a standard metal file. That is more than enough to do anything that you need it to do. And I am here to tell you an axe like this, sharpened with a file, is plenty sharp for 95% of the people out there. And there you go, a little bit about axes. If you have use for an axe, or if you think you need an axe, there's a lot of good information out there. There's a website out there called The Art of Manliness. That actually have quite a bit of information on axes and things of that effect. And of course, there's quite a few YouTube videos out there. And if you're into survivalist stuff and things like that, or if you're doing off-grid living, oftentimes an axe will be very useful. Dick Prenneke, who's kind of considered the father of off-grid living, if you will, basically built his whole cabin up in Alaska using an axe, a draw knife, and a crosscut saw, and a few other hand tools. But an axe was quite obviously a very integral part of his system of living because he needed it to process firewood and things of that effect. So an axe can actually be a very useful tool. It can also be a very dangerous tool. So please, if you're using an axe, use some caution, use some common sense, understand how an axe works, make sure you're aware of your surroundings, and when you get tired, take a break. Don't push it, because that's when accidents happen. So let's go ahead and wrap this video up. Now, if you found this video entertaining, or you found it mildly entertaining, or you got some good information on it, please do me the solid of hitting that like and subscribe button down below. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you get notified of upcoming videos. Hit me with those comments. Anything that you want to see me do or talk about, or if you ever wondered about something, let me know and I'll see if I can't get it done on the channel. With that, this is Ed from Jack of All Trades. As always, thank you for stopping by, and we will see you on the next video.